Beyond Resilience is a series of curated conversations created by Firelight with the purpose of exploring the challenges, strategies, and experiences of creating and distributing work during a time of crisis.
Nobody's going to give us any power until we ask for it, until we demand it.
The role of storytellers right now is to tell those stories that people are refusing to tell, and to do so in a transparent manner.
It is critical to me that my team, again, reflect the community that we are going to be talking about, or the community that is the subject.
There are so many missing narratives in the Black experience that would do so much to help both the understanding of Black people in our current situation, but also other people who are trying to understand what's going on.
The decision makers need to change. It is not okay that this small group of white folks are the ones who determine which stories matter, which filmmakers matter, and decide and set the terms on which these stories are made. That is literally what has gotten us to the place that we are in.
We're talking about systemic change, not a one-time grant to a couple of organizations. That's what we need.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome to the 32nd New Orleans Film Festival. It's taking place right now. If you happen to be in New Orleans, you can catch screenings in theaters through Sunday, November 14th. And if you're not, you can catch them virtually. Many of the films from our lineup are available online through our virtual cinema. You can just visit neworleansfilmsociety.org to learn more, see the lineup, and book some tickets. My name is Xander Shea Brown. I'm a programmer with the festival, as well as the artist engagement and programming manager. And so I work with our Filmmaker conference, which is happening in tandem with the film portion of this festival, which this panel falls under. So we have a great selection of pre-recorded panels that are already available to watch on our virtual cinema. These are free and open to the public, and they make for really great resources for filmmakers and film lovers. So I really encourage all of you to check out more of our conference offerings and maybe share them with a filmmaker in your life, or film lover, or someone who's just curious and would like to hear some of these conversations. This is one of the few live panels we'll be hosting for the festival this year, and one I'm particularly enthusiastic about because we get to work with Firelight on this one. And so I always love an opportunity to do that. I work not only to engage filmmakers in conversations that might be interesting to them or useful to their development, but I'm also a working filmmaker myself. And so I faced a lot of barriers that many other filmmakers have been facing creatively in these past few years of unrest. And one is that question of, what difference does it make for my work to exist when the world is the way that it is? And more importantly, how can I show up to work when the world is the way that it is? And for many of us, the answer to that question has been self-care. And we understand that it's a necessity more than ever. And that without it, we face barriers in accessing our work and our joy and our deeper selves. So I wanted to host a conversation about what it looks like for filmmakers to care for themselves. And Firelight thankfully answered that call with this beautiful panel called Beyond Resilience. And so with that, thank you so much to the Firelight team, to the incredible panelists here, and our moderator, Annie Mercedes, and everyone in the audience. And without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and pass it over to Annie to get started.
Welcome, welcome everyone. We are so delighted to hold this space for you today and for you to be here in community with us. Bring whatever you need into this space. Bring kids into this space. Bring whatever you're holding into this space. Bring your full self into this space, and give yourself the gift of being present here today. This is about self-care, sustainability, very emotional and emotionally heavy topics. So my goal today is for you to leave here with at least one helpful insight, moment of clarity, or aha moment from our panel. With that, I'll introduce myself. My name is Annie Mercedes. I'm CEO and founder of Looky Looky Pictures, where we connect the power of film with the power of people through impact production services. My pronouns are she, her. And I'm joining you from Miami, Florida, the unceded land of the Tequesta and Seminole people. I would like to do a visual description for those that it may be helpful for. I have medium brown skin. I'm wearing an orange shirt, and I have movie posters in the background of my home office. I would also like to just thank Firelight and the New Orleans Film Festival for organizing this and inviting us to be here. I also invite all of you joining us live to tell us in the chat, where are you joining us from? Let us know where you're tuning in from around the world. Are you in New Orleans? Are you in the United States or somewhere in the US? And before I get started, I want to just invite us all to just take a deep breath and be here, be grounded, and be present. So let's inhale and exhale and release whatever you're holding. If it's comforting, just put your hands over your heart and take a moment to just care for yourself, be present with yourself, and hold space for whatever you need and what you're grateful for. Just reflect on that in this moment. And we're here to have a conversation and hold that space with you. So with that, I would like to introduce our panelists, and I'll also invite them to say hello after each introduction. So first, I will introduce PJ Raval. He's an award-winning filmmaker whose work explores the overlooked subcultures and identities within the already marginalized LGBTQ community. IndieWire described his film Before You Know It as a crucial new addition to the LGBT doc canon. PJ, would you like to say hello and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. PJ Raval, he, they. Super excited to be here. And just a big thank you to Firelight New Orleans Film Festival for having me.
Thank you for being here. Next, I'll introduce Angela Tucker. Angela is a writer, director, and Emmy Award-winning producer and founder of Tucker Girl Inc. She's passionate about stories that highlight underrepresented communities in unconventional ways. Angela, would you like to say hello?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Angela Tucker, visual description, Black woman, glasses in my kitchen with some art and curly frizzy hair. And I'm based in New Orleans.
Thank you. Next, Julianna Brannum is a documentary filmmaker based in Austin, Texas. Her first film, The Creek Runs Red, aired on PBS's Independent Lens, and her latest film, La Donna Harris, Indian 101, received support from the Sundance Institute, National Geographic, and ITVS, amongst others. Julianna, would you like to say hello?
Yes, hello everybody. Thanks for having me. As Annie said, I'm Julianna Brannum. I'm a producer, director, and citizen of the Comanche Nation. I'm calling in here from Austin, Texas, my tribe's ancestral homelands, as well as the homelands of the Apache, Tonkawa, and Caddo tribes. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. And finally, Byron Hurt is an award-winning documentary filmmaker who challenges audiences to question gender, race, and class in American culture. Byron's upcoming documentary, Hazing, is intended for a national PBS broadcast on Independent Lens. Byron, would you like to say hello?
Hey, what's up, everyone? PJ, you've got me thinking about how I can, really update my virtual background game, man. That's a really dope background. Hey, hello to everyone. I'm calling from New Jersey, the unceded land of the Lenape people. I'm a brown-skinned African-American man. I'm in my home basement. I have movie posters in the background of my films, and I am wearing a burgundy shirt, although it looks kind of black in my screen. So I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very thankful for the opening So entry into this discussion by taking a breath, because I really needed one. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Don't we all sometimes? That's why we are here. So with that, let's get started. This is really a conversation, not intended to be a presentation. So those of you watching now, please share in the chat your thoughts, what resonates with you. If you want to just drop an exclamation point or your favorite emoji or just the word yes, if you hear something that resonates, or a comment or question, because we will take your questions throughout. And actually, my first question is to the audience. Tell us in the chat, what brought you here today? What do you hope to learn from this conversation? What do you hope to walk away with? And we can focus on those things, because this is for you. So in the meantime, I have a question for all of you about this past year, what you have needed, what challenges you've encountered, and what has helped you face those. So as you reflect on the past year and a half, how did you get through some of those challenges? What are things that have been challenging to you? And do you have any care practices that have helped you move through this time? And I'm going to go in that same order. So I'll start with PJ.
Sure. In certain ways, I'm probably the worst person to ask this question to. And I always feel pressured to, when people ask me about self-care or care, I always feel pressured to come up with something. But I want to be real for a moment. Like, I don't have some kind of meditation practice I do. I'm not a huge fan of like knitting or cooking. I don't have a hobby like that. Like, I don't want to sound like I'm a workaholic, but I'm kind of a workaholic, right? I like filmmaking. I like making work. So for me, a lot of my self-care isn't even so much about stopping what I'm doing, but maybe reminding myself what I'm doing and why I'm doing it and how I'm doing it, right? So just briefly, I do feel like, having made several films now and worked in the film industry for the last over a decade at this point, 15 years maybe. I think I've come to realize that, filmmaking is very much embedded in a capitalist practice, right? And sometimes that definitely gets me down, dealing with the industry side of things, the business side of things, like knowing that what you're so passionate about, someone looks at as unmarketable or niche, or something that you really are putting your whole self into, someone is looking at as, who's the audience for this? Who's going to care about this, right? And those simple things that people say are like daggers to you, right? Especially when all of yourself is being put into something. And thinking specifically about this last year, I've been thinking a lot about how it's just been a bombardment of everything, from like an election to the summer of racial reckoning to Stop Asian Hate, thinking about all these things, a global pandemic. There's just so much going on that I saw a lot of people get, immobilized, right? Like, really stopping in their tracks and not sure what to do. And I myself had a moment of pause there, right? Like, what am I doing? And I think, I think for me, it's always helpful to just think about, in that moment, if I'm feeling, how can I best serve, maybe, as a way to think about it. I do think about my practice, right? Like, I'm a filmmaker, I'm a storyteller. What I can do is I can tell stories, I can make films, right? And I can share stories, I can, focus and highlight and do all these things and hopefully go into impact and all of these kinds of things. So without taking too much time, for me, it was a matter of reminding myself as a filmmaker, I don't have to make films necessarily with a capitalist lens. And what I mean by that is I intentionally started, alongside some amazing people, more community filmmaking kind of projects where I'm not thinking about if this is going to be a Netflix deal. I'm not thinking about, which EP is signing on to this or what grants, I'm applying to. I'm just thinking about what resources do I have available to me? Like, let's meet with the community and figure out how I can use my skills as a filmmaker and as a storyteller in a more non-commercial space, but in a more, community grounding and kind of supportive space. And that makes me feel good about realizing I can't make it to every activation, and there's only so much money I can donate to something. And yes, I'll be on social media and try to repost things, but I'm limited as just a human, right? But what I can do is turn my attention to what I am able to do, and be mindful about how I can plug that into. So for me, that was a lot of this last year.
Thank you for sharing that. If anyone, I know I'm very conscious about voice equity, so don't feel like you have to be conscious of that. That's why I'm here. So just release, no need to rush. This is a space held for you as well as panelists and filmmakers. So conversation, if you want to speak to something PJ said, just jump in. So want to just give you that as well. And in the spirit of what you just shared, PJ, just being present and what you can control, that's not something you have to worry about right now. So just share, be here. And again, I invite all of you in the chat to share what resonates with you and maybe share your own self-care practice as a filmmaker. With that, Angela, I will turn to you to share reflections over the past year.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I appreciate what PJ said too, and that, whenever you get asked this question, you do feel like you're supposed to say, well, I go for a run every morning for a mile and it really clears my head. And then I have matcha and it's really good. And then I, and it's like, I don't do any of those things. And I should do them more. But I will say that, what the pandemic has taught me in sort of being really forced to be still and being forced to not go 27 different places is it's made me think more intentionally about the kind of travel that I am doing, the kind of things that I take on versus the things that I don't take on. I think I was somebody who really tried to say yes to everything and to make it work. It's even if it's a crazy schedule, I'm going to make it work. I'm going to travel here and be there for 3 days and then go back and do here another day. And being just forced to be home for so long really made me see the importance of my home life. And now that things are opening up more, because I do feel like we are, in a way, we've all learned these lessons. And now I do feel like it's kind of going back to how it was in a lot of ways, demand start to ramp up. People, as things open up, people want you to be places more and do things more. And now you've got this kind of weird place we're in where it's a little Zoom, it's a little in person. And so I now am just really trying to say yes to the things that feel right for me and say no more than I used to. And that's made a huge difference for me, just in terms of, I'm really sitting down and thinking about what are all the things that I said yes to. I try to do as much service as I can within our documentary community, within, various filmmakers of color. I really try to be present for people, but at a certain point you have to say, there's not enough hours in a day. How can I take on fewer things, but be more fully present in the things that I do? So that's been a big thing that I've learned during this time.
I see so much nodding. That totally resonates. And if that resonates for you and you're watching, let us know. Jasmine shared in the chat, I was drawn to this conversation because I've struggled with wellness sustainability in all stages of my film. Thank you for sharing that, Jasmine, and others watching, please feel free to share as well. We're here not just for self-care, but this is a moment of communal care where we can care for one another. Self-care is a term that's sort of isolating, and we reflected on in our work with the film Through the Night, which is about care and communal care. So this is a moment for you, Jasmine, and everyone watching of communal care. So with that, Julianna, if you could share.
Yeah, well, I was nodding my head yes, because that was exactly kind of, that was exactly my feeling when thinking about this panel and this conversation. Because at first I just thought, well, gosh, what can I share? Because I'm so terrible at taking care of myself. But then I just kind of got a flood of thoughts about this because I was really clearing out my schedule these past couple of weeks to deal with, my own mental well-being and to lighten my load. I like Angela, I rarely say no to things, and I do a lot of service for the community, I feel like, as well. For instance, like, reading, being on a panel to read grants, or, working with an organization, a diversity organization. And we have meetings every week, and I was feeling so overwhelmed with work that I recently just scaled everything back, and I just started saying, I'm so sorry, I can't do this. Or, I have to be honest with myself. I felt that all these commitments were really, destroying me physically and creatively. So I've had to make some changes, and I've got to, stop saying yes to everything. And it's okay to, be real with yourself and your time and be respectful of that. But in terms of the pandemic, I had, previous to the pandemic, everything kind of shutting down, I had been out of work for a few months. A job that I had signed on to was getting pushed back and pushed back. It finally started 2 weeks before the shutdown. And at that point, the job ended. And so I spent a good chunk of the next few weeks panicking about what I was going to do financially. My daughter was home from school every single day, and that was putting a lot of pressure on me to entertain her and keep her happy, and then also, transitioning to online school. So there was a lot of stress there, but I think another thing that I kind of took away at that point too was to not see that as a burden, but embrace that as time that I can be present with her, and that, a time that I, and try to feel kind of really blessed in that situation. So, really kind of just putting a different lens on, I think, in these, kind of crazy times. Also in January here in Texas, we had a horrible ice storm that, destroyed our power grid, and that was insanely stressful. And again, taking that time, I was working at that point, and I basically told everybody, it was a crazy busy time on a documentary series I was working on, and I just said, hey, I'm out for the week. I'm collecting snow to go flush my toilet, so work can wait. so yeah, I think it's just, I think that's a really good form of self-care, is just managing your time and being real with yourself. So hope that's helpful.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I see so many echoes and threads, like judgment of ourselves for care. You are, if you do not prioritize your care, no one else will. So I want to just acknowledge that. I also want to acknowledge that rest and care is not a luxury. It is something you deserve as a human being. So it is a part of your practice as a human in this world, and part of your artistic practice as a filmmaker. So I love the reflections around being mindful about what you're telling yourself. I should. And anytime you hear yourself saying should to your own thoughts, just be like, let me reframe that and think about want. Do I actually want this or not? And then some other echoes are saying no. Angela talks about doing fewer things but being more present, for example, and Julianna with your child in homeschooling as well. So this is a place where the truth is here. That's what care is about. So Byron, would you like to share?
Yeah, I was laughing so hard to myself when Angela was talking, because I actually do run a mile a day.
I know you do. That's almost partially why I said it.
Is that right? So yeah. So I mean, I don't, I haven't done it every day, but I went through one big stretch where I ran a mile a day for 31 days, and it was just something that I wanted to do for my own physical health and well-being. I do as best I can to put really good food into my body, to eat well, to eat a nutrient dense diet. And, You know, one of the things that I have found myself doing, and it's been rather intentional, but after 4 years of, the, 45 era, I really felt like I needed to unplug from mainstream media, cable news media, and really just sort of indulge in escapism. So, I've been watching a lot of sports. It's how I unwind and how I escape. I mentioned the exercise, but occasionally, when I feel comfortable and safe to do so, I will get a massage. I have this really nice little graduate student massage therapy place that I can go to. They give like these really, inexpensive massages, and so I love going there. And that's one way that I take care of myself. And the last year and a half has been extremely hard for me, as well as so many other people, including everyone on this call. I'm sure I have lost a lot of friends, a lot of colleagues, a lot of people who I know either from COVID or other illnesses that took lives too soon. And so that has been a lot, and it's been heavy. It's been heavy on me. And so it's another reason why I just try to take care of myself to the best of my ability. And the one thing that I could do more, and I see Angela put it in all caps in our chat, is to get more sleep. I mean, it's to actually dedicate myself to getting more sleep and more rest, because I do know how important it is. But that's the one thing. If I have one Achilles heel, it's still not getting enough sleep. And you mentioned it. Angela mentioned it. I mean, it's a really important and key aspect to recovery and in regenerating your body and your soul. So that's the one area that I really need to continue to work with.
Yes, our own internal chat blew up with sleep. So indeed. I do also want to echo the exercise and food. It's like basic sleep, food, and shelter, right? Like these are just basic human needs. Rest is part of that. It's so easy to just work and work and work. Right before we started this panel, some of us were just like having a snack, eating lunch, just pushing through. Just want to underline that it's okay to stop. Stacy said in the chat, I like the point about self-care not being a luxury. Absolutely. Jasmine, we also saw your question. We'll come back to that. But want to highlight what you said about things that are energizing versus things that are draining, and sitting in that. Is this energizing or is this draining? And saying no to the things that are draining. That's okay too. I heard somewhere if it costs you your mental health, it costs too much. So that is something I've been reflecting on recently as well. Before we switch, I was going to switch a little bit to talk about sustainability for filmmakers. But before we do that, are there any other thoughts that you all want to share or echo? Please feel free to do so. Yeah, just jump in.
I just one thing to mention along the self-care line, that we all really need to be honest with ourselves about therapy, and if that's something that would be helpful to us. Getting professional help is not something that should be seen as a weakness or that you should be ashamed of in any way. So I'm a huge proponent of talk therapy. And so I do that when I can, and you make that time, 1 hour a week or 1 hour every couple of weeks. If you are able to do that, I just highly recommend taking that time for that.
And I would like to also add that, along the lines of what Angela said, and I think Julianna said it as well, is that the pandemic has made things much more clear for me in terms of who I want to be moving forward, coming out of the pandemic, and how I want to devote my time, how I want to invest my time. And so prior to the pandemic, I was all over the country, sort of like what Angela was saying. I was all over the country, having screenings, giving speeches, keynotes, leading trainings, using my films as, educational media tools. And I didn't really fully understand or appreciate how crazy my schedule was until I had to stop and slow down completely, until it just grounded to a halt. And what I learned from that is that, one, I really enjoy being home. I love being home. I love being home with my family. I think Angela mentioned that too. And I also realized that I really want to spend the majority of my time just making films. I don't really want to be on the road doing all of the things that I've done before in the past. I just want to make films. I just want to be more prolific as a filmmaker. I love the creative process. And I think that that's a part of self-care too, is like really saying out loud and really committing to doing what it is that you feel you're called to do, that you're passionate about doing, and doing it. And so that's where I have landed, 1 year and a year and a half after the pandemic.
I just want to say one more thing, and then an hour. But something too that happened to me during the pandemic is that, I fell in love during the pandemic. And honestly, I share that. I mean, like, yay, but also I share that because that wouldn't have happened if I was not home and able to be focused and present for another person. I haven't really been able to do that with the crazy schedule that I was allowing myself to have, to feel like I have to do every single thing that somebody offers me. And I really understand now how having this time to slow down can bring so many good things to your life, and prioritizing the things that you want to do creatively, and you have to do, because we have to acknowledge that sometimes you have to do some things to survive. But so that's kind of another form of self-care too, is that I was able to make room for another person to be in my life and to bring things into my life. So because there's so many hardworking filmmakers on this call, I just kind of wanted to mention that as well.
Congratulations to you, Angela.
Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for bringing up therapy. I go to therapy on Thursdays every week. I'm going to drop in the chat a free week of therapy. If anyone would like that link, there you go. I highly recommend going on a journey just to explore yourself as a form of care. As a reminder, our conversation today is about self-care and sustainability. So we're holding space for that. Our goal is for you to leave here with at least one helpful insight or tool that will help move you forward in your own care. I know, Jasmine, you had a question that came in from the chat. You're currently working on care planning, thanks to Firelight, for yourself, others in your film, and those that will be affected by your film, like some family members as you near premiere. Would love to hear from our wonderful panelists about care planning for what we call your film family, the whole ecosystem of people around your film. Mm-hmm. So we'll take that question and then talk a little bit about sustainability. Would anyone like to talk about care planning? I can as well.
Yeah, I can do a little bit of it and talking about, so I was a producer on this film, Belly of the Beast, and along with Nicole, also who works at Firelight. And this really came up for us because, the film is about women who were forcibly sterilized in prisons in California. So it was really heavy material, not just for us, the creative team behind it, but also, our two main people who are featured in the film. So, we were always, allowed to, if we wanted to have the production pay for a therapy session or two, we could do that. None of us took did it, so that's our problem, right? Because that was allowed to us in our budget, but we did budget for that. And then also, what's been really helpful too is like in our engagement work, we Kelly, who's the protagonist of the film, we had her watch kind of multiple cuts and really get feedback. And at the end of it, really sat down with everyone involved in the film and talked to them about what the release of a film really is. Because I think, a lot of people who are featured in films don't really understand what that process is, meaning, the various screenings, people asking you questions. But another really important thing that we did in having these conversations, and we worked also with an organization that media trained us, was we learned that for Kelly, it was really difficult in the Q&As. People would ask her to basically walk them through the process of her being forcibly sterilized in the Q&A. And doing that was re-traumatizing her. And by having those conversations, what we learned is every time you do a Q&A, we have this conversation of, so these are the questions you are allowed to ask, and these are the questions you are not allowed to ask. And if any of us can sort of see, because I do a lot of Q&As with Kelly, if we can kind of feel the conversation drifting in that direction, it's on us to bring it back or to shut it down, or, just so we're creating a space where that Kelly doesn't have to kind of go through that. And there's a way more elaborate process, but what we did, but I'm glad, Jasmine, that it's important that you start to think about that work, because it's going to be ongoing and it's going to evolve over time, because as the film is in the world, it's going to affect you in different ways than you can anticipate. So you also have to kind of check in with yourself after, maybe at a 6-month point or a 3-month point where you're out in the world doing the Q&As. How does it feel? What feels weird? How can you shift the dynamic so that you're not in a position also where you're sharing things that you don't really want to share?
And thank you for that, Angela. That's certainly something that we encounter a lot in our work. We call this protagonist stewardship, but part of that too, Jasmine, is you having your own care plan first. It's like a glass of water. We often maybe give the water to others and then we're left with nothing. The goal actually is to fill the cup so that the overflow is what others get. And that starts, I think, with your own self-care. And no one can prioritize that and figure out what you need besides you. So let's not necessarily shift gears, but bring into this conversation the topic of sustainability, because I think this goes hand in hand with care. So my question to you is, as successful filmmakers chosen for this panel by Firelight and the New Orleans Film Festival, do you feel your work is currently sustaining you financially and mentally? What are your reflections on that? When did you first feel the way that you feel, and what indicated that? And are there any resources that you might be able to share with folks? So I'll go in that same order. PJ, would you like to go first?
Sure. I'm also thinking just a little bit of what Angela mentioned. I do think one thing of care also, for me, which kind of leads into this idea of sustainability, is owning your feelings and owning your emotions, right? And I do think when you're dealing, I've been making a lot of work recently that is around trauma, and really thinking about making sure that I'm not re-traumatizing, but also make sure I'm not traumatizing myself by doing these kinds of things. And I think there's, I do feel like there's sometimes pressure that we're supposed to be these unemotional robots, and if we are emotional in some way, it's a weakness. And if so, we don't see something objectively. And, I think as people, we feel, right? And there's something to be said about that. I think in terms of sustainability, that does help me sustain, is recognizing that, what I'm doing is I'm emotionally feeling, right, and invested in. But just kind of more on a practical scale, you know, when I started my career, whether or not it was a career at the time, you know, I've always been directing my films, you know, producing my films. And I, you know, unfortunately, I did not come from a lot of family money. You know, I didn't have any kind of, you know, support. I was definitely, you know, supporting myself. So, so because of that, I've always had a job. You know, I've always had to pay the bills. You know, I've had to rely on myself just financially, right? So at some point within filmmaking, my main paycheck was working on films, not as a director, right? I was working on films as a cinematographer, and I was mostly working as a cinematographer. And yes, I started making films where I was getting paid as a director, but nowhere near a living wage that I think would be beyond the level of poverty here in the United States, let's be honest, you know? You know, and I'm not dissing any other filmmakers, but, you know, some filmmakers have a partner who supports them. I didn't really have that situation where, you know, I had a place to live without paying rent, you know, things like that. So I've always been very mindful about just how I'm doing financially. And at some point, you know, I decided that you know, kind of going back to what I said at the beginning of this panel too, I just was recognizing that I'm making these films where people are telling me they're not, you know, there's no audiences for this, or it's not commercial enough, or we don't know how many people want to see this, you know, which translates into, we don't know how much money it's going to make in the return of making this kind of film. And I just could not deal with that pressure anymore of feeling like I needed to make something that was always thinking about profit and distribution, right? So part of me was trying to figure out ways to alleviate myself from feeling financially beholden to filmmaking, if that makes any sense. So I started thinking about what are some other things that I want to do. And I actually don't talk about it too much because I feel like sometimes people judge me for saying this, but I teach, you know, I started teaching. I took a teaching position, and it has been amazing for me, to be quite honest, because suddenly I'm able to really focus on my work in terms of what I want to make, and you know, and not have to really think about certain, you know, financial prospects at the beginning of stages of filmmaking where I'm really just wanting to explore things, and not feeling like I have to keep hustling every, you know, minute of the day to churn that paycheck. And for me, it's been fulfilling in a lot of unexpected ways. You know, so I also am in Texas. You know, I'm also in Austin, Texas, like Julianna, but you know, I'm living in a state right now where women, you know, cannot get an abortion, for instance, right? And it's really hard to like see, you know, understand that you're living in this kind of community. But to be quite honest, I'm working at a public institution where my job as someone who's also a teacher is to help guide the next, you know, the next generation of filmmakers. And I have students who are making work about women's reproductive health care. I have students who are making work that challenges, you know, this Texas legislature, for instance. And that is so fulfilling in a different way, right? That it sustains me to think I can be not limited to being a filmmaker as a director, but thinking about myself as a filmmaker, also as someone who can pass along my knowledge, right? Who can, you know, people say pay it forward, but I can, like, you know, pass along whatever I know, help encourage, help support. And I get a lot out of that, you know, and I think I didn't realize how much I got out of that until more recently. And I've always been someone who's, you know, very big into programs. Like I did Firelight, thank you, Firelight, you know, and I love concepts of mentorship, and I love programs where, you know, you can be supported as a filmmaker, as an artist. And I want to be able to do that also, right, with my position. I feel like I've received that from others, and I think it's important for us as a community to kind of do that. But I, you know, I guess I want to throw out there is that I feel like part of my way of becoming sustainable was recognizing what else I need to sustain me beyond my films themselves, right? And I think I have found that in other ways, you know, as whether that be a teacher, whether that be someone donating my time or volunteering. Like, you know, when the pandemic hit, I, you know, asked ADOC if I could join their leadership team because I really wanted to double down on supporting, you know, Asian American filmmaking, for instance. You know, and how can I contribute and pass along that knowledge. So that all of these things have kind of helped me sustain.
Thank you for sharing that. Angela.
I don't even know where to begin. There's so many things. I mean, PJ touched on so many things, and then I was like, but do I say that or do I answer? Anyway, I'll say that I too taught for a long time and just stopped teaching just this year. And I'm really grateful for the years that I was a professor, because it was, over the pandemic, and it was really nice to not worry about finances during such an intense time. So I decided to leave because I couldn't really manage all of the filmmaking that I wanted to do and teaching with the load I had, with the teaching load that I had. But one thing I want to share is I've always had a sense of how much money I need to live. Meaning, like, what is the real dollar amount of what I need to make a year to survive? And I'm not talking like barely surviving. I'm talking about like to live the life that I want to live. And I say that because as a freelancer, sometimes people don't think in that way. And I think it's really important to have a dollar amount to that, so that even when I'm making over that dollar amount, I'm sticking that at money and savings, and I'm really living on that dollar amount, right? And that has helped me approach freelancing a little differently, because I'm able to say, okay, I need this amount for, this is the amount of money that I need for all the things that I need. So I have done that, and I've lived kind of below my means forever, so that I have a savings account. And so I'm not worried if things get slow. And I always kind of, when I'm not teaching, I try to keep one sort of gig that's like a consulting, like something that is consistently paying me, that covers a lot of my sort of bills. And then I'm making projects around that as well. And that could be all kinds of things. Like sometimes it's teaching, sometimes it's, now it's kind of more consulting work. But I'm on this new journey now in terms of, I've been very fortunate. I've just been getting a lot of commercial work. And so I've been directing commercials. And I did a series for REI, and that kind of opened up a different world of the kind of work that I'm getting. And I've been enjoying doing that because it's very lucrative for a very short period of time. So even if there's a lot of bullshit, it's not that long, It's like I can deal with like a week of bullshit to get paid, like what I need to make for months. I mean, to be totally honest. So I'm doing that and using that to supplement the other kind of longer form work that I'm doing as well. And that's been, I've been making more money than I was making when I was teaching. So I'm just kind of staying on that path. But I mean, the kind of teachable piece of this is really, I think a lot of people really don't know how much money that they need to make to survive. So I would recommend coming up with that number and thinking about treating yourself like you're a company. Like, what is the cash flow for that? How, like not just, okay, I need like this amount, but okay, and how often do you need it? How can you create a world where if someone is like paying you in 30 days, that doesn't like mean you're like not eating, I mean, you really kind of have to think about that because this business is so, you get a check every once in the blue moon. So how can you make that sustainable for yourself?
Thank you. So much there. I feel like everyone has a rich lesson. I'm going to continue, Julianna, if you'd like to share.
Yeah, well, I want to echo what Angela said about, and I think that is a part of self-care too, is taking care of yourself and preparing and taking care of yourself to reduce your anxieties. As freelancers, we are forever in a state of hustling. And I hate that. I've done it for so long, and there's periods of time where I just say I'm done with this and I want a full-time job with benefits and health insurance, and then I try to look and nothing, nobody will even look at my resume, because what am I going to do for them? They don't see my skills translating, so then inevitably I'll get a job that keeps me comfortable for a while, and then you go through, you kind of go through these peaks and valleys. For me as an Indigenous filmmaker, very recently have I felt like there's a lot of work coming my way, because there's so few of us that work as producers and directors in the Indigenous documentary space. And now I'm at the point in my career, I think, where I'm turning down jobs that I would love to take. Really great opportunities are starting to come out of this, diversity and inclusion conversation. And so that I'm the most grateful for, because this is I'll be 50 years old next year. And, to have hustled this hard for so long and be worried about, if there's going to be a period of time that I don't have work. And in reducing that anxiety that goes along with that, I really kind of started taking bigger responsibility for my financial sustainability by making sure that I know these patches of quiet time will happen. And I need to have something as a backup to try to support me. It's hard, earlier in my career is harder financially than it is now, but let's be honest, we still have those periods, those kind of dry periods, and then just emotional sustainability, I guess, is I oftentimes do take jobs that are less stressful. So if I'm approached to maybe be a showrunner or director for a doc series or something, for TV that I know is going to be crunched into too tight of a window, I don't want that pressure. I don't care how much money that is paying me. I don't care that I could be a director on this really great show. That sounds like I'm setting myself up for physical and emotional failure. So the stress of it, I'm a very anxious person. I suffer anxiety. So, when I start feeling overwhelmed, it starts affecting me physically. And so, maybe I'll instead say, you know what, I would rather take, I do archival research a lot. And that's kind of my easy comfort zone that I like to do. So, for certain projects, I'm just realistic about that stress level and the time. Also, because like I said, I have a young girl, and so she's very demanding of my time. So, maybe I would just say, for the audience members, I think the younger days are when you can really kind of push through that workaholic kind of mentality. But once you start having other obligations as you get older, maybe say taking care of a parent or a child, or you needing to be at home more and not being able to work as often, like just to be kind of cognizant that you can shift your priorities. And for me, it's shifting what jobs I take. So.
Thank you for sharing that, especially caregivers. Caregivers need care. So I want to just echo that. And also remind those who are watching live, we are going to have a Q&A, so tell us in the chat what questions you have, so we can get to those as well. Byron.
Documentary filmmaking has been a series of ebbs and flows for me. I've had moments earlier in my career where I've been very fortunate and very prosperous, and then I've had some really lean, very difficult, very challenging years where I did not know where money was going to come from, and I struggled. And one thing that has really helped to sustain me so that I can continue doing the documentary filmmaking that I love is public speaking. and the lecturing that I do at colleges and universities. I have a lecture agent who I've been with for a very long time. And so I've really been able to sort of sustain myself by speaking at the college and high school level, you know, on the lecture circuit, which has been really beneficial for me to continue to do what I want to do. The challenge with that is that, you know, it takes me away from home, and it sometimes takes me away from the filmmaking, right? If you're always on the road and that sort of thing. Two things I want to mention about the pandemic is that I was able to apply for and receive, you know, 2 PPP loans. And I want to thank Firelight Media for organizing and, you know, providing support for filmmakers who needed support, who needed information about how to acquire PPP loans, paycheck protection loans. And so with that, I was able to continue to keep moving as a filmmaker through the lean and uncertain times of the pandemic. So, you know, I wear multiple hats. I teach as well. I've been an adjunct, and I continue to be an adjunct at Columbia University, working with the film students there under June Cross. I've done some artist in residencies, which have paid me to work with students. The most recent one was at American University, which was a great experience. Shout out to Bridget Marr, who brought me in for that experience. And so, you know, to be able to teach in film and make money, in addition to, you know, receiving royalty checks from my educational distributor, the Media Education Foundation, which are much more sizable than PBS distribution, I would say, you know, has helped me to continue doing this work.
Thank you for sharing that. And one thread that I think is common in what you all have shared is it's all encompassing filmmaking as a practice. And there are so many ways that the different forms of your practice take. Education as one of those. I can reflect on so many times where I've been mentoring a filmmaker at a retreat, and they pulled me aside and they're like, you know, I feel pressure to be the director, but I don't really want to do that, or I'm interested in this other thing, or it's all about the director and the making. So I think one lesson here is like just giving yourself permission to do other things, and also giving yourself permission to say this other thing that isn't the director also feels good, feels joyous, feels there's no judgment or shame in that. It's part of our practice as creative individuals. So want to highlight that. And also want to invite all of you, yes, to come off, you know, reflections from listening to one another in that. Go ahead.
Yeah, can I just add one thing too? You know, one thing that also changed my life greatly, you know, I would like to think for the better, is that I bought a house, and I never thought I would be able to do that, you know, and I recognize for some people in certain cities, it might not make sense. You know, I know that there's calculators online that tells you if it's, you know, for the area that you're living in, maybe it's better to be a renter than it is to purchase. But I do think there is something about, for me, thinking about sustainability, having space, for me, the sense of owning something, that I can make it something mine as a workplace, as a home place, as a place where I feel loved and supported, right? But also part of what made me do it was I made a documentary about LGBT seniors, you know, like senior citizens, like those getting older. And I really saw what happens if you don't have space, right? If you don't have property, it really can be challenging. So when I did that, it really, for the once in my lifetime, made me think about my life in a future tense. Because you know, kind of what we were mentioning earlier, when you're always hustling, you're not thinking about 5 years from now. You're not thinking about 3 years from now. You have a 6-month window that you're thinking about, right? How do I get through the next 6 months? How do I get to Christmas? Okay, after Christmas, what do I have lined up January through February? Because those are the hard months, that kind of thing. When are my big spendings going to be? Like, okay, I'm going to drop a lot of change to go to Sundance this year, that kind of stuff. And so, but thinking, purchasing a place, it really made me think about like, well, what are the next, if I'm thinking about a mortgage that's 20 or 30 years, what does that look like? 20 or 30 years, how am I going to do this? It made me put a lot of things into question. And again, again, it's not for everyone. Not everyone would be in the position. But the other thing I want to throw out there is I have seen friends also do that with other people. So I have had friends who have gone in together and purchased a place, and really think about this more kind of communal living. And again, other cities, it might be making more sense or where you are, but it doesn't have to be a solo thing, right? It can also be other people that you find that maybe want a very similar thing, and maybe there's a way to make that work, right?
Yeah. I just want to piggyback on also the we're in this moment where I think you can live in a lot of different places and still make films, particularly documentaries. So, I live in New Orleans, and I made that decision for that reason. Like, I really wanted to be able to work on the projects that I wanted to work on, as opposed to when I was living in New York. I felt like, I had to just take what was given to me because my expenses were so high. So I really kind of encourage people to think about that too, to think about if where you're living is serving you. And also, this was something kind of that was brought up much earlier in the conversation, but that I just kind of wanted to circle back to when Julianna was talking about sort of the ice storm in Austin. And with self-care, what I've noticed is with climate change, we are all going to be dealing with all kinds of different weather that is going to impact our lives in very intense ways. I live in New Orleans. I just came off of Hurricane Ida. Many other places have as well. And so one of the things that I've really had to do for self-care is to say, there's a national disaster happening. I don't have power. I am figuring out where I'm going to live for the next 2 weeks. I don't have to meet this deadline. And I think that I'm hoping that really culturally we get to be more open to that, because it's just this weird thing of we're all trying to chase these deadlines, and we're all supposed to like live up to these deadlines as we don't have power, I've tried to just be more honest with people, and realistic with myself. Like, I can't actually manage all of these things while I don't know, my power isn't working, or while I'm sleeping on someone's couch until New Orleans is back again. I actually don't have the bandwidth, and actually being in a natural disaster is incredibly emotionally stressful and requires that I take a beat. So I say that because when I heard Julianna said that, I had that same feeling of, Jesus, yeah, people still want you to keep going, when you're in the midst of a natural disaster, and you actually can say, actually, I can't, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, those boundaries echoed all through, up and down, as part of our self-care. With that, I want to actually, I know we're getting close to the end, but end with that. Just a round robin question for you all. What do you have a daily practice, or is there one thing you try to do each day to ground yourself, or share something that you are currently grateful for? I would love to do that. And maybe let's go starting with PJ. I know you might have a call to jump off of, so let's get your thoughts.
No, I'm okay actually, but thank you. Honestly, I'm grateful for my partner. I have a partner who's been really supportive, and that does so much, right? When we work in these kinds of industries. In terms of a daily practice, I actually do exercise every day. I get a lot out of, exercising. So I try to make time for that. Not even I try to, I specifically make time for it every day, because it's a good reminder, just my physical body. That's really important to me. And I know it's been said earlier, but I really am the type of person that if I don't pay attention, I stay up all hours and I usually have to get up early. And so sleep has become something that really is something that's really good. And so for me, it's just being really mindful that my will and my brain might be able to go 24/7, but my body actually needs something else. So paying attention to that is really important, right? And understanding that, for me at least, when my body is, has the proper rest and the, nourishment that we were, mentioning earlier, that it really does help me concentrate more and I can sustain more. So.
Thank you. Byron, would you like to share?
After a year and a half of a global pandemic, I'm grateful for my health. I'm really grateful for my health and being alive and being well, and that my family is well, and that, the people closest to me are well. So I'm really grateful for that. And I'm grateful for, the privilege of being a documentary filmmaker, of being a director, of having multiple projects on my plate. I'm grateful for the opportunity to do what I love. I'm very passionate about documentary filmmaking. I love it. I absolutely love it. This is who I am. This is who I want to be. And so, in my opinion, doing what you love, following your dreams, your passion, and, sort of self-actualizing is one of the ultimate forms of self-care, right? Because as a filmmaker, I get to express myself creatively, and I feel self-expressed as a documentary filmmaker, especially as a filmmaker who makes first-person documentary films. So I just have a lot of gratitude for being able to do what I feel I've been put on this earth to do.
Thank you for sharing that. Julianna.
I would also say that the one thing I do make sure to do every day for self-care is eating well, making sure I sit down for those meals because we get so busy. It's really easy to forget to eat. I mean, it's just, Angela, we were just talking before we started here. It's like, sometimes it's like, yeah, it's 3 o'clock and I'm just eating lunch. I try to really make that a priority, but also sleep is a huge priority for me. I need a lot of it, and I'm not ashamed to say that. I'm not a 6-hour a night person. I'm 9 hours. So I get to bed early. If I need to get up early, I try to sleep in when I'm able to, and I have no shame in that. And I guess what I am most grateful for, I mentioned earlier, just the conversations around diversity, inclusion, and having new opportunities, being presented to me as an Indigenous filmmaker. I'm having, there's a lot of people coming to me that are recognizing that these stories need to have this Indigenous lens, and they're coming and reaching out to me and saying, we'd like you to help us tell the story, and having these opportunities after so many years of just seeking them out. And it feels good. Like, I feel like I can breathe now. So I hope that sticks around for a while.
Thank you for sharing that. And I invite all of you watching to share in the chat what has been most helpful for you, an aha moment, what you're grateful for. As we wrap up, Chris shared, I'm grateful for the Beyond Resilience series. Thank you for sharing that, Chris. Angela, would you like to share?
Sure. I've been reading more actual physical books, and that's something I do every day, even if I'm just reading like a page or two. I sort of gave myself a New Year's resolution to read a certain number of books, and it's gotten me now in this process of just reading every day. And so it takes me kind of out of what I'm working on creatively, what's going on in my life, or, I just kind of I really missed reading. I had stopped and felt like reading, articles online. I mean, that's one thing, but just kind of getting embroiled in a book is a very different thing. So that's something that that I enjoy and do every day. I blanked on the second part of the question. What's happening?
You have a grounding practice.
Oh, I think reading was my grounding practice, but what was the other one? Sorry, guys.
Gratitude.
Yes,
gratitude. Thank you. Okay. Oh wow, that's really telling. I'm gonna bring that into therapy. But I'd say that I woke up this morning and I'm in pre-production for a film that I'm directing, and I am like doing all the things you do. You have like your meetings, and you're making your mood board and everything. And and my partner asked me, he's like, "How are you?" And I was like, "I'm good." I was like, "I'm living the dream." And he actually stopped me and said, "You are living the dream." And I was like, "What?" He's like, you are doing exactly what you dreamed that you would do. So that's not something you're actually saying. This is what you're doing. And it's really incredible that that's what you're doing. And it took a minute for me to realize like how grateful I am that I'm able to tell the stories that I want to tell in the way that I want to do it. To, be able to direct film I'm very fortunate to do that. And so many people dream of doing this. So I'm really just grateful that I'm able to do that.
Thank you. I think that kind of echoes what you were saying, Byron, as well. Like we're reminding ourselves that yes, this is hard. Yes, we are faced with moments of adversity and having to overcome and struggle. But this is chosen work, and the luxury of being able to make the choice to do this work is a blessing and something to be grateful for as well. So thank you.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah, of course. Jump in, please.
I forgot to talk about my grounding practice. So it's been said before. But I, for me, exercise and, the meditative practice of just spending time with myself and working on my body, my physical fitness is something that I feel like I owe myself. And I carve out that time every day intentionally, as early as I can, so that I'm taking care of my physical body, my mind, my body, my spirit. I try to listen to music that encourages me, that motivates me, that gets my blood going, and that makes me feel like I'm like on my path. So I just wanted to say that because I left that out.
Thank you for sharing that, and I will echo. I also do the same. Every morning I exercise first thing, and then I meditate. So yes, I want to just close by again just grounding us and being here together. Thank you for being here, panelists PJ, Angela, Juliana, Byron. Thank you, Firelight Media, Nicole and Justin behind the scenes. Thank you, New Orleans Film Festival. Chris shared, I live in a remote rural area, and the online presentations and panels have helped so much through the loss of travel for artistic engagement. Thank you for sharing that, Chris, in New Orleans, for making this accessible to those outside of New Orleans. And thank you all for being here and attending, and those watching the replay. We are getting lots of gratitude in the comment. Grace shares, I'm grateful to be in community with everyone on this panel, especially today as I'm feeling under the weather and not working, just absorbing your wisdom. Thank you for being here. I just want to again underscore the value of not just self-care, but communal care. This can be very solitary work. You are not alone. We are not alone. And us coming together as a community is part of our care. So reach out, find that community of filmmakers and creatives that sustains you and pushes you forward. So thank you all for being here. If there aren't any closing thoughts, just want to again express gratitude for everyone here and everyone watching. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Bye, everybody.
Thanks.